the done deal with Greece. 14-hour marathon session in Brussels, 130 billion euros. That's to be meted out over several years, not all of it going directly to the Greeks. In exchange, painful belt tightening. With us from Athens, Nikos Vernikos, chair of the International Chamber of Commerce in Greece. Also with us, Tarik Mouakil, economist, author of Asset Market, Portfolio Choice, and Macroeconomic Activity. From the American University of Paris, Philip Golub. And from New York, for the market's eye on all of this, David Gurwitz, managing director of Charles Nenner Research. Just a couple of comments for you from the France 24 Debate Facebook page. We asked you the question, what would be the best way to spend the 130 billion euros? Well, Kogodla from Tamaga in Botswana says, give every poor person in Botswana $1 million. We did the numbers, actually, million euros. We did the numbers. It actually comes out to 21,600 euros. So that wouldn't be enough to give every single poor person in Botswana, but it would probably relieve them to a certain degree. We also had this comment from Michael from Harare, who says, basically, it's killing the goose that lays the golden egg. How is Greece expected to pay off its debts when its economy keeps shrinking? It's a repeat of what happened to Germany in 1923 during the Weimar Republic. And it does raise the issue. Nikos Vernikos, you're asked to be doing yet more belt tightening. You're asked as well in this to sell off state assets when it's not the best time to sell. You have snap elections coming up in April. Is it going? How are those elections going to go in this context?
During the next elections, I'm not expecting any party to be able to form a government by itself. But with the present government, which is supported by the two major parties, Greece is being educated to coalition government. This is something that has not happened in the past. So I'm optimistic, and I want to believe that with coalition governments, we are not going to repeat the errors and omissions of the past. We have to make reforms. We are going to make reforms, and I think these reforms are going to be more successful if we have a coalition government.
Philip Golub, the far right polling at some 35%. The left also is doing well in the polls. What's going to happen after those snap elections?
Well, yes. I mean, the point here is that the primary political parties, the main parties in the Greek political system until now, New Democracy and PASOK, have been quite considerably discredited. PASOK's polling at 8%. New Democracy is polling higher, but the New Democracy is, of course, in significant part responsible for the financial crisis that emerged after they built up Greek debt during the early 1990s. So what you're seeing is, yes, a radicalization in which the established political system is losing credibility and in which the institutions of state are being put into question. I don't, of course, want to put into question the good faith of people, and I understand Mr. Vernikos' concerns, of course. But that being said, I think we have to look at things straight. The institutional structure in Greece is not functioning. The state is not functioning. The state apparatus itself has been significantly discredited in the eyes of the Greek people. All of this has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. You need to build a modern bureaucratic state. That takes time. It cannot be done under conditions of continuous emergency, as has been done over the past 2 years.
And yet the euro remains popular in Greece. A poll that came out last week said that between 60 and 70% of the Greeks would like to stay in the Eurozone.
Yes, you have to understand that, historically speaking, Greece emerged as an independent state. It's somewhat of a historical digression, but it's important. In 1820, 1830, after the War of Independence in 1821, the Greek state was established in 1830 under foreign tutelage, under British, French, and Russian imperial tutelage. King Otto was imposed. King Otto, a German born ruler, was imposed as the new monarch of Greece for 40 to 50 years. And Greece remained under tutelage for a very long time. Skipping forward, there was World War II, there was the Depression, there was World War II, there was starvation during World War II, and then there was starvation and great bloodletting and suffering during the Civil War. Democracy came belatedly and with difficulty during the Cold War. Modernization came with difficulty under American help during the Cold War, and then the Colonel's coup occurred in 1969.
So it can be done, but it takes time.
What I'm saying is that you have an incomplete a state which didn't go through the historical process of modernization that, for example, you find in France or that you find in Britain, whose state, the states which were formed much earlier. It takes a long time. It takes a long effort, and it requires. Yes, I agree with the idea of a Marshall Plan. It requires a long haul of reconstruction, not the kind of extremely bitter austerity that is being imposed from the outside. One last remark on that. I think certain German leaders who have been trying I'm not talking about the Chancellor, but certain German leaders who have been trying to push Greece out of the euro without saying so, would do well to recall the kind of assistance that they received from the United States from 1945 to 1962.
Under better terms. David Gurwitz, what do you think about a Marshall Plan for Greece? Would that be a good idea?
I'll answer kind of along the lines of what Professor Golub was saying. I don't think it will work, because if you take a look first, I'm going to echo what he was saying historically. Take a look at interest rates for a second to kind of give you an idea. We could, there's an expression, man plans and God laughs. Take a look at interest rates. They're low now, around 2010, 2011, 12. 1980, they were high. 1950, they were low. 1920, they were high. 1890, they were low. 1860, they were high. 1830, low. 1800, high. That's a 60-year cycle. That was that's from a man named Kondratiev, who died in a Russian prison. That means 2040 rates are going to be high, which means bonds are going to go down in value, according to Charles, starting in about 6 to 8 months for many years. So all this bond discussion of trying to manipulate it under a so-called Marshall Plan, according to the way we see things, it's not going to work. So I agree, and I agree, Charles agrees, that it would be better off to be less austerity, for sure, in light of the historical precedents that always benefited. But will that be effectual to turn this all around? We think not, and we think it's better off that everybody recognize that and make alternative plans. What if food prices double, which is what Charles thinks? What if we have a stock market that gets cut in half over the next several years? What if you have you have the euro, which of course everybody thought was going to crash, didn't, but will? What if you have a strong Aussie? Look at China now. China, if you go to China, I have a lot of friends go to China, everything there's European. So they're buying tons of euro stuff. That's the extensive reason why the euro hasn't crashed, because China's pouring in, but according to us it was cycles that then led to the action. So I don't really see that a Marshall Plan will accomplish what everybody wants. But then again, politicians are generally elected to do stuff and say Keynes knew what he was doing. We don't agree with that. We don't think that that the emotion can accept the fact that we really don't have the say we think we do.
All right, so that definitely the long-term view, looking at...
Pessimistic, but that's kind of where we're holding.
All right, looking ahead to 2040, of course, much sooner we could see inflation. A lot of analysts are predicting that staple items will go up. We've seen the price of oil spike over the tension in Iran even, and this is during a season of weak demand. There's a reason why Consumer Group in Athens, by the way, calling, and this gets back to what Philip Golub was saying, for a boycott of German and Dutch goods. Last week it was Germany's finance minister paying lip service to the concept of wresting away control of Greece's purse strings from Athens. On Monday, his Dutch counterpart spelled it out even clearer.
When you look at the derailments in Greece, which have occurred several times now, it's probably necessary that there is some kind of permanent presence of the Troika in Athens, not every 3 months, but more on a permanent basis. I'm in favor of that, yeah.
So Nikos Vernikos, there'll be money in an escrow account. The Dutch finance minister, very clear there. Are you giving up some of your sovereignty?
I don't believe. I, as a ship owner, when I'm taking a loan from my bankers, I open an escrow account and I put every month a percentage of my income. I think that when you are arriving in a point that you need to take a loan, when you have a debt, it's normal to have an escrow account, especially in the case of Greece that we have bad habits and we have to make reforms. So I don't feel that I lost my sovereignty. I feel gratitude to those who helped me not to bankrupt. I feel gratitude to those who, and for political reasons, they decided to help Greece, and I do not see my people like it was the case of the people in Argentina 10 years ago. Of course, we are going to have a tremendous cut of the wages, but believe me, Greek people prefer, the majority of Greek people prefer to have the wages cut down from 800 euros to 600 or 500 than to go back to the drachma. The drachma, which is going to devaluate every year. 70% of the Greek people prefer to stay in the Eurozone. And I believe that with a new leadership that is going to be found in Greece, like in many other European countries, following the disgrace of the previous political parties, the future for the new generation is much better than it is today.
All right, so a new dawn for Greek politics, you argue. Many argue, though, that the situation does remain bleak. Like Nicholas Hastings in the Wall Street Journal says, this bailout isn't going to save Greece, but it will save Spain, Italy, and Portugal, perhaps. He goes on to say that the threat of a Greek departure may still send shivers through the capitals of other peripheral debtors, but given that this bailout should delay such an event by weeks, if not months, that's buying time for those Mediterranean and countries. Your thoughts? Is this all about buying time for Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Ireland?
It seems so, because at least it's obvious that the main objective of European leaders was to avoid a disorderly default of Greece. That's because nobody knew what the consequences of such a disorderly default could have been. And so this was the first thing. But so now we have avoided this kind of disorderly default, but so we don't have, the thing is that European leaders don't have any solution, or at least they don't want to go in the direction of the solution that like the financial
or at least not
crisis
speak about it publicly.
And the markets are asking for. And our colleague from Greece was mentioning the fact that he wanted his country to be like a good company and to repay all of his debt. And I think this kind of approach, that is also the approach of Germany, is part of the problem and not part of the solution. Because yes, it's true, Greece now is in the situation of a company or a private household that has to repay its debt. This means that the Greece debt is like a sub-sovereign debt. It's the same thing as Mexico indebted in dollars. But the situation was really different before that, because when Greece was indebted in drachma, I mean, there was not the possibility of default, actually. And the fact that we do not have a central bank that can monetize debt, the European debt, is really at the heart of this crisis. And this reminds me of the debate that we had around Christmas when French officials in the government were complaining about the fact that Anglo-Saxon rating agencies were downgrading France but not the UK, and that this was unfair. A few days after, there was a paper in the Financial Times explaining that no, it was not unfair at all, because the British debt is a sovereign debt. And for 2 years now, between 2009 and now, 3 years, then, the Treasury, the Bank of England, has bought more than 50% of the debt issued by the Treasury.
So should the euro be saved?
We don't have a proper central bank, so all these countries are now in the situation of companies that have to repay debt. This is
so do you save the euro and create a central bank, or do you?
We know that the solution
go back to the drachma, the franc.
The solution will be, let's imagine that we are that we do not have all these political issues about this. The solutions are quite, I think, in my point, are quite easy to implement. It's first to have a real central bank that can monetize the debt, and second point, to have a fiscal union, a real fiscal union. Because so if the first part of the problem was the fact that we do not have a proper central bank, the second cause of the crisis is that we do not have states that are ready to support each other.
Philip Golub?
Yeah, I think that's essentially right. I mean, you need a growth. You need factors to introduce growth. Right now, you do not have the transfer mechanisms within, like in the United States, the Federal Reserve System. When California goes bankrupt, as it is today, fiscally speaking, California does not go bankrupt because it's part of the United States, essentially. And similarly, either you move towards a truly federal union, in which you have a fiscal union, in which you have a central bank that acts as a proper central bank and acts counter-cyclically rather than pro-cyclically, that actually has continental space behind it and continental economic activity behind it, or you're going to progressively move towards breakup. Now, I don't mean necessarily that that'll lead to a complete breakup of the euro, but look at the social strains, look at the political stresses. Youth unemployment in Spain is 46%. Youth unemployment in Greece is 45%. Unemployment went up from 7% in Greece 6 years ago to 20.9% today. Youth unemployment in Portugal is horrendously high, and so on and so forth. All right, and the Irish crisis is not quite solved. In fact, it's not at all. So what you're going to have is very significant and increasing stress in all of these countries, and you'll have significant stress, I think, also in countries like France. It's impossible under those circumstances to say that you're going to save Europe through pan-European austerity regimes. It simply won't happen. The euro won't be saved by that. One solution might be, but the Germans would not agree to this, is that Germany leave the eurozone. If Germany has profited tremendously from the euro for a very simple reason, that the euro has been underappreciated as compared to German export potential. The surpluses, German surpluses, trade surpluses, under normal circumstances would have led, had the Germans still been on the Deutschmark, would have led the Deutschmark to appreciate rather sharply, reducing German competitiveness and increasing the competitiveness of other countries. Being in the euro, this has given the German industry a cushion, you see, from which to export. If Germany were to leave the euro, which is of course a fantastic scenario, it's not going to happen, that would actually rebalance the balance of payments problems that you referred to at the very beginning, you see.
Right, and
because you have deficit countries and surplus countries. Surplus countries cannot exist without deficit countries.
And both Germany and Greece have in common that they've done rather well since the introduction of the euro up to this crisis. So maybe perhaps necessity will be the mother of invention. I want to thank you, Philip Golub. I want to thank as well Tariq Mwakil for being with us. From New York, David Gurwitz for crunching the numbers there, and Nikos Vernikos, chair of the International Chamber of Commerce there in Athens. Thank you for being with us. And we want to thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, we'll see how the markets rose slightly after this deal. It'll be Tom Burgess-Watson with business.